Good morning, everyone. You're very welcome to the Three Counties Energy Agency Communities Energy Grant Information Workshop. My name is Fintan and I work as an energy engineer with Three Counties Energy Agency. Just a small bit of housekeeping. If we could, or if I could ask people to keep their microphones mute, switch off their cameras. Try not to interrupt the speaker as we're going along. There's a Q&A tab on Zoom where you can ask any of your questions. So appreciate if you put any questions in there. We'll try and answer as many of the questions at the end of the session, and we are also recording the session, which will be launched on our YouTube channel in the near future. Also, Mary will issue a survey later on today just to get some feedback. So quickly, a quick overview of what will be discussed in this presentation. I will start with some background to our own company, Three Counties Energy Agency, followed by some insight into the grant funding levels, the various measures included, the evaluation process, and the importance of sustainable energy communities. I will then finish off with a number of examples that we have worked on over the years, and then we'll take the questions and answers at the very end. Okay. At Three Counties Energy Agency, we're committed to supporting every energy user in using energy more efficiently, monitoring energy use, and towards a greater choice of renewable energy sources. We work in partnership, raising awareness, providing support, and delivering low carbon solutions in the region since 2012. We are a non-for-profit and independent energy agency working primarily in Carlow, Kilkenny, and Wexford. We have a voluntary board of directors drawn from the private, public, and community sectors. Our region is a leader in sustainable, efficient use of local produced clean energy, delivering low carbon homes, jobs, and enterprise. To give you some idea of avoided energy spend, grant drawdown, and kilowatt hour savings since 2015, the slide summarizes all these aspects. So through the Better Energy Communities grant process, we've reduced energy consumption by 39 gigawatt hours since 2015, avoided 4.2 million euros in energy spend, and drawn down about 8.2 million in grants. Along with that, we've retrofitted in the region of 644 homes and improved energy efficiencies in 235 businesses and SMEs. Just to give you an overview of 2019, we had 7 BEC applications, which resulted in 43 projects and 57 houses. There was a total investment cost, or capex cost, of 4.85 million euros, and we drew down 2.1 million euros in funding, and we saved in the region of 7 gigawatt hours of energy. Okay. Mary, we're going to do a quick poll just to get an idea of the various sectors that we're talking to. So you would see popping up on your screen there a poll. Like you to select the options there. So you see option A is private domestic housing retrofits. Second option is community or sustainable energy communities. C is commercial non-domestic. SMEs, we also have agriculture, transport, and public authority or local authority, and then other, you know. Okay. Right, okay, thanks for that. I think everybody has responded. Very good. Good response, thank you. Now, just what is BEC? I suppose BEC, as it used to be known, as it's now known as the Communities Energy Grant, is part of the government's national retrofit programme aimed at upgrading building stock and facilities to high standards of energy efficiency and renewable energy usage, thereby reducing fossil fuel usage, energy costs and greenhouse gas emissions. As part of this initiative, the Communities Energy Grant supports new approaches to achieving high quality improvements in energy efficiency within Irish communities. By bringing together groups of buildings under the same retrofit programme, community projects facilitate community-wide energy improvements more efficiently and cost effectively than might otherwise be possible. The Communities Energy Grant is designed to engage all members of SEAI's Sustainable Energy Community Network who wish to participate in delivery of energy efficiency works, as well as those project coordinators who have previously participated in SEAI Community Energy Grant projects. The grant is designed to support cross-sectoral partnership approaches that deliver energy savings to a range of building types, including public, commercial and community buildings, with a particular focus on using the projects to deliver home retrofits along with supporting the SSC network members in advance of their learn, plan, do process. Projects are required to demonstrate a building fabric approach in line with the SEAI definition in the following order of priority. So must be energy efficient as possible. So it's a fabric first approach, show or be able to decarbonize heat considering and utilizing renewables where feasible, improve ventilation and adapt smart technologies as appropriate. Now, this slide will give you some idea of high level figures, which you should keep in mind. And I suppose starting with the maximum grant per application. So it is possible to draw down €2 million worth of grant per application. This has increased on previous years where it was in the region of 1.5 million. It is recommended that the minimum amount that we are applying for would exceed 100,000 euros. Each application, 50% is the overall maximum percentage funding allowable per application. So if costs and fees, etc., exceed the 50%, well then there's a possibility that application will be rejected. There is 10% retention on projects receiving greater than or equal 150,000 euros in grants. The indication from SEAI so far is that there is 28 million euros worth for the Communities Energy Grant scheme, and sitting alongside that there will be an additional 17 million for the National Housing Retrofit Scheme. Just an outline of the percentages then. Again, this is slightly different from previous years. There's now a default 30% in the application for all projects. Now, 50% can be available for communities subject to certain terms and conditions by SEAI. So we therefore have to submit an application to SEAI to be pre-approved for the 50% funding level for all community projects. So this is introducing a small bit of delay and an extra bit of administration on our behalf, but it shouldn't be anything to worry about in the communities front, you know, so that there should still be no issues there for communities. As I said, what SEAI will be looking for is pretty much if there's a contradiction to state aid rules, you know, so I don't think any of the communities we're dealing with will have issues there. On the SME commercial side, there's 30% funding there, along with other non-domestic facilities. And you might see from the slide there, it's a very good example of some of the work that can be achieved through the Better Energy Communities Grant. On the left-hand side, you can see the picture of Wine Gap Community Hall as it was beforehand. and on the right hand side then is the end result. So this is where a community in Windgap, County Kilkenny, worked very hard, got to raise a lot of money through various funding streams, but the Better Energy Communities Grant took care of the energy efficiency works in this complex. So a very well done to Windgap community. In terms of housing, I'm not going to dwell too much on housing, just to say that under the Communities Energy Grant, there is funding available for housing retrofits. So there's 35% available for local authority housing. There's up to 50% available for housing associations. There's 35% available for private rented homes. Now this is new on previous years, so just something to keep in mind. There is 35% for what we call private non-fuel poor, so that's most housing. And then there's also 80% available for private fuel poor housing. So there's certain terms and conditions to meet there to achieve that 80% funding. Right. I suppose these applications, they're group applications, you know, so we have a lead applicant, which in our case is generally the local authorities or the county councils, as they might be better known as. They support communities and businesses in their region and allow the grant payments to go through their payment systems, so you can get and draw down your grant money. 3CAA are the project coordinators, so we aggregate all the projects from the various sectors and bring them into a single application. As well, any entity seeking funding under the scheme will be known as a beneficiary. We have to show partnership in the application, and partnerships are created by all or some of the sectors coming together. The more partnerships on the application, the better one will score in that application. So as you can see, partnerships are created from the public sector, the private sector, communities, and as part of communities, you'll have sustainable energy communities, you'll have housing or domestic, as we call it, and then we have also what's known as the participating energy supplier. So a couple of questions you have to ask yourself, you know, to determine whether you want to be part of the Better Energy Communities Grant. You know, you have to consider, are your energy bills high? You know, are you experiencing cold or damp? You know, is the lighting conditions poor? Have you drafty buildings? Is there condensation or mold on your walls or windows? Are staff complaining of being cold? You know, have you sufficient attic insulation? You know, are you at the 300 millimeters of attic insulation where you should be at? Are your walls insulated? Is your boiler more than 8 or 10 years old? Have you heating and zone controls? And have you LED lighting, or have you lighting controls such as infrared sensors and motion sensors? You know, is your building draft proof? And again, you know, your windows, you know, have you just single glazed windows, or have you double glazed, triple glazed, whatever, you know? So these are all questions you should be asking yourself. Okay. So in terms of the measures that are eligible, or also the upgrades that are eligible, so you have technological and system improvements. You have building fabrics, as I've outlined in some of the questions earlier. So that's wall insulation, attic insulation, and windows, doors. You know, are you considering renewable energy options, you know, such as wind turbines, biomass, solar PV, solar thermal? Again, going back to some of my questions, you know, have you energy efficient lighting? They're all funded. You know, heat recovery systems and ventilation. Again, microgeneration, you know, or are you thinking of solar PV, solar thermal? Smart metering, you might be an SME or commercial sector. You might want to keep an eye on your energy consumption, whether that be thermal or electricity, or you might have different parts of the business, such as refrigeration, you want to keep an eye on. So again, smart metering is funded. And very topical at the moment is EV chargers, so there's funding there under the Better Energy Communities Grant to receive funding for the installation of EV chargers. I suppose applicants should be aware that energy upgrades may result in material alteration to building or buildings involved. Where a project incorporates a protected structure, advice should be sought from conservation architect prior to application to confirm whether the proposed works require approval from the local authority before proceeding. So applications received without the specified permission will be declined and removed from the application at evaluation stage. SEAI do not recommend heritage buildings to be proposed in the communities programme due to the measures required, the technical difficulties, and the permissions also required. So in circumstances where all the above issues are resolved and certification can be provided, this type of building may be included as part of an application. And as one of those examples there is Abbeyside Church down in Dungarvan, a historic building. We're able to apply a unique render system to the internal surface of the external wall, a product called diatomite, which gave insulation properties to the external wall. So that was another very good example of work that can be done on historic buildings. So how do we get involved? I suppose the BEC application process is now open. We're actively taking applications and projects. If you haven't been in contact with us already, please email us and express an interest in being part of an application. We have to ask the question when you do come back to us, have you an energy audit? So that's one of the requirements for under the application, is to have an energy audit or a technical report submitted with the application. So these are a few questions you will have to ask, and we'll be more than happy to help you out and to see where you're at with your projects. So basically, in terms of the energy audit, if you have or you haven't an energy audit, so great. If you have an energy audit, you can come straight to us. There'll be a small application fee, and we will consider the projects outlined in the audit and put them in on the application. If you don't have an energy audit, you have two options there. You can ask Three Counties Energy Agency to complete the audit on your behalf, or you can get a third party to complete the audit. Now, the audit must be to a certain standard to meet approval under the BEC guidelines. So for us to do the audit, we have a couple of options there. We have generally three types of audits that we quote for. First one is a walkthrough audit, which should be somewhere in around €400. There's we spend a couple of hours with you on site, look at the specific measure that you have in mind, and do up a report suitable for the BEC application. If it's more general and you don't know where you're starting from, we will spend a bit longer in your premises, do more detailed audit. Obviously that involves a bit more time on our behalf. Again, write up a report which is also suitable for BEC application. And then, if you're looking for the bells and whistles, more detail, really looking at the financial side of it and making sure that it will work for you and your required return on investment. Well, then it's what's called an investment grade audit, and those can exceed about €1,800, so it does get quite costly. And size of your premises will also dictate the price. Now, moving along, just to give you an outline of time frames. We have a timeline here. So basically you can see currently November 2020, we are actively preparing applications. It is hoped we'll have a number of these applications submitted towards the end of this month and early next month, so they can be with SEAI for a number of the SEAI have 2 proposed board meetings, one in December, one in January. So if we can get them in early, we should hit the December board meeting. If we're later than that, it will go to a January board meeting. So that will add a certain amount of delay in the process, and when you might expect a letter of offer out. The absolute deadline is the 29th of January of 2021. Now that's the absolute deadline, but the indication from SEAI is that this particular grant scheme will be oversubscribed this year again. So it is very important that you get into us ASAP, get the process started, get your audits in place so that we can complete an application on your behalf. So once the applications are submitted and successful, we would expect a letter, what's called a letter of offer, back out from SEAI somewhere in the region of March 2021. With that letter of offer, there will be a contract which binds us to deliver then the projects that we've applied for. So in terms of project completion and delivery, we are stating that the end of September for project completion, we are allowing then an additional 2 weeks for absolute deadline to allow for inspections, payments and supporting documentation to be collated and submitted to SEAI. So that deadline is the 15th of October. When all of that is returned to SEAI, grant payments or a certain amount of the grant payments would be paid out. And then circa 8 to 12 months afterwards, we do or carry out what's called the measurement and verification process, and that'll happen somewhere around August 2022. SEAI would hold 10% of the funding until such time as this measurement and verification is completed. Okay. So what sort of upgrades? Again, a poll, just a very quick poll, just to outline where or what type of projects you might be considering. So option A is building fabric, option B is lighting upgrades, option C, renewable energy or solar PV, D, controls such as heating and lighting controls, and all of the above, or other, so there might be something else there that might be of interest to you. Okay. Okay, I'll just give that a couple of minutes. Okay, I think that's all everybody in. That's okay, still some more coming in. I'll give it another 30 seconds. Brilliant. Okay. I think that's the end of it. Thanks, Mary, for putting that up. Okay. Okay, as I said, there's a process. We put the applications together. We aggregate all the projects from the various sectors. We submit it to SEAI on your behalf. SEAI carry out an evaluation process. So as you can see, the number of items here that SEAI will consider to make sure that it's a worthwhile application. So the first thing that we'll look at is value for money. So obviously you have to see that it gives value to the Irish state. There's sufficient energy savings achieved across all projects, and that's the calculations used by ourselves here meet their methodology. Again, another very important aspect of the evaluation is the community and partnership approach. So making sure we have a good mix of community applications, there's partnership between communities and the business sector, or communities and the local authorities, and so on, so that there's cross transfer of knowledge amongst the sectors. And also, important for SECs, they're on a journey now, and they want to be able to show SEAI that they have a roadmap ahead of them, whether that's through an energy master plan or some other plan that they may have in place. Really, from our perspective, we have to look at the quality of the delivery so that we have the expertise in-house to deliver the projects, that we put in place robust project plans, and obviously submit quality plans, and that we follow the necessary procurement processes as required for the various projects. As I said, the applications should show a good range of innovation can either be on a technical front, or something unique in terms of delivery, or a unique finance arrangement. Just again, to give you an idea of evaluation, you can see in terms of value for money, there's a lot of marks for value for money, 40 marks for that part. There's 35 marks for the whole community and partnership approach, and 25 marks for quality and delivery. So you can see there's 3 areas there that we have to score on quite well. Now, just in terms of value for money, what SEAI will look at is the total eligible cost per kilowatt hour. So for every kilowatt hour that is saved through an application, SEAI will look at how much that will cost to implement. So a low euro per kilowatt hour cost is very beneficial for a project. And the second or the third thing on that list is carbon savings. So there will be a cost associated with every kilogram of CO2 saved. So I suppose that's something that we have to worry about, and that as part of application, we're juggling projects to try and make all these figures work. Now, as I said, this grant is targeted at supporting communities, which is also inclusive of the sustainable energy communities in the delivery of community energy grant projects. So to ensure that the projects involved in this grant are aligned with this ambition, the section would give additional supports to SEC involvement in the projects. So again, if you look at this particular table, if you're a registered SEC with a completed energy master plan, you will receive full marks there, 20 marks. Again, makes a very strong application. You might be at different stages of your journey, so you might only be a registered SEC with an approved energy master plan grant, so again, that scores quite well. And further down, then you might just be a registered SEC, or you might be a network member. So there's all marks. There's marks going for those categories as well, and you may be part of some other community grouping. So a recognised community grouping needs to provide evidence of the existence of this grouping. So acceptable other groupings would be, the likes of the Tidy Towns groups, or other which are organised and have a specific community purpose. In terms of the Energy Master Plan, I've mentioned Energy Master Plan. It's a plan that is already submitted to SEAI as part of the SEC Community Engagement Plan. A completed plan is one which has been submitted and accepted under the terms and conditions of the SEC scheme. Other energy plans may be acceptable, for example, the Covenant of Mayors or other European projects in which the community is actively engaged with, which may also be evidence of an energy master plan. Again, where a Covenant of Mayors is indicated, full marks will be allocated where SEC engagement is clearly demonstrated, such as public events, meetings, and the provision of supports and advice to these groups. again, as you can see from the slides, you know, the greater number of beneficiaries, the higher you will score. So projects that include a wide range of beneficiaries have a bigger impact in their community. So the beneficiary types, as I mentioned before, can be not-for-profit or community groups, private sector such as commercials, SMEs, and non-domestic. And then we also have the public sector groups such as the local authorities. This year, there's a mandatory requirement to include domestic homes in each community's project application. As you can see, I've circled this table here, you know, so if we include 10 homes and they achieve a B2 rating or greater, you will receive significant marks under the application and the evaluation criteria. You know, in terms of SECs, this year SEAI are looking for a letter of support. They've issued us with a template which we can forward to any of the SECs so they can complete and return to us, and we will submit as part of the project. So it's a straightforward letter, number of tick boxes, and just representatives. You just must outline the representatives of the communities and to sign it on behalf of the SEC. Now, moving on, another part of the criteria or the evaluation process is that no more than 20% of all the savings can come from lighting projects. You know, this is a significant move in this year's application process. So we have to aggregate all the projects, add up all the energy savings, and then if lighting exceeds 20%, we may have to make some changes or drop out some of the lighting projects. But that's something that 3CA will worry about when projects are submitted. Okay, just in terms, I've already mentioned that there could be a oversubscription on funding. So I just put this down off the SEAI website yesterday evening. And this is SEAI use a tracker which is published or updated every Friday afternoon. You know, so this is the tracker for the National Housing Retrofit scheme, and you can see there's only 35% of the budget remaining. You know, so there's a big demand on the housing side of things. As time progresses and as more kind of non-domestic or the BEC applications are submitted, we'll have a similar type tracker for the BEC program. In terms of documents that are required, all right, firstly, we will require a VAT letter from revenue to confirm your VAT status, you know, just to make sure whether you can claim VAT back or you can't claim VAT back. We'll need a declaration of your financial resources. So we have to, or you have to show the SEAI that you can pay for the projects. You have to show a bank statement if some of your projects exceed 50,000 in CapEx. We will also need your tax clearance certs, so your TCC and your access numbers. So those all have to be provided to SEAI, and they must be in date before the letter of offer is issued. As I said, there's a big focus on the SECs and community aspect of the applications this year. So we have to confirm to SEAI that projects coming from community or non-for-profit organizations or even charity groups, you know, have no alternative or other income, just to make sure that don't contravene state aid rules. So that this year, which I said is different to previous years, community groups and non-profit organizations, charity organizations automatically default to 30%, and we then have to get pre-approval from SEAI to increase those levels to 50%. If you're an SEC, as I said, you have to show or give a letter of support to say that you are part of an SEC. and also that we'll also ask you to provide what's called a participation letter as well. Just the final thing, it's been already mentioned that in order for us to submit an application on your behalf, we have to have an energy audit or technical report for the measure that you are thinking of submitting. Just by way of example then, some of the projects we have worked on in previous years. This is a community centre, Woodbine Heights in New Ross. They carried out attic insulation to pump the cavity walls. They upgraded their heating system, installed new doors, and upgraded their lighting system. So the total project cost was in the region of €1,600, and they received €8,000 back in grant. And that allowed them to save €970, or 50% of their energy costs going forward. The next example is Kilteely Community Hall in County Wexford again. So they spent in the region of €81,000. They got over €40,000 back in grants, which allowed them to save in the region of €680, or 22% of their energy costs going forward. Some of the measures completed in this hall were boiler upgrade with heating controls, there was attic insulation, wall insulation, new windows and doors, and they upgraded a portion of their lighting in the main hall. So another very good example. Just to show that it's not all community, this is an example of Port Arrington Leisure Centre in Laois. Again, the boiler upgrades replaced pumps to various speed drive pumps. They installed a new building energy management system and a number of meters on their utilities, which allows them to track their energy use going forward. Their total project costs was in the region of 132,000, and they received over €66,000 back in grant funding. And just to show the amount of savings can be made over a 25-year period, they would potentially save in the region of €590,000 over the next 25 years. And that will show us or realize a 2.9-year payback period. Okay. Right, so that concludes the presentation. So we might just look, we have a number of questions in the chat.
Okay, Fintan, first one coming in from Dan McInerney. If a community group has an energy master plan in place, but is not part of an SEC, does it still only get 5 marks?
Yes, the energy master plan has to be approved energy master plan and submitted to SEAI. So I would think you will be getting the lower marks there. Yeah.
Okay. What are the terms for private fuel poor housing?
We will circulate this, but for private fuel poor, you're looking at pretty much in receipt of social welfare, fuel allowance, some other form of support from social welfare. It's listed on the SEAI website, but we can circulate that separately if need be.
Okay, another question from Tony Mooney. Do solar panels need to be cleaned in Ireland?
I would say yes. As an energy engineer, I would have to say yes. It's good practice to clean solar panels in Ireland. Location is also important. So depending on where the solar PV panels are sited, they may be on the roof of an industrial premises where there's a lot of dust and debris in the atmosphere. That will settle on the solar PV panels and reduce their efficiency. Other areas may not be as important, but it's good practice to clean solar PV panels.
Okay. Is floor insulation eligible?
Is floor insulation eligible? It is eligible. I would say it should be included with other measures. It shouldn't just be a single measure. Floor insulation, dependent on the building or the facility. If you're ripping up a floor, whether it's timber suspended floor or a solid concrete floor, it's quite expensive to do, and the payback periods are quite extended, and it is a costly process. So it should really be incorporated with other measures to try and reduce the impact of or improve the overall return on your investment. But short answer, yes, it is eligible, but it should be incorporated with other measures.
Okay, another one from Jeanette. Hi, in the eligible measures section, would heating controls upgrade come under technological and system improvements? I noted that LED lighting was specifically listed in Fintan's slides, but heating controls weren't, and I wanted to check.
Yeah, heating controls would come under technological and system improvements. Yeah, I suppose that's something that, you know, that we can consider from an application perspective. But if you are considering any of these measures, you can have a chat to us afterwards, and we'll give you a good steer in that direction. But, you know, to be honest, anywhere where you can show energy efficiency or energy saving would, in theory, be all eligible as part of this grant scheme.
Another question in from Johanna. For private homes, does the application need to have a few measures or a single measure possible, such as external wall insulation only?
For private homes, there's a requirement there to meet a B2 standard. There's also, as I said, I didn't want to get into too much detail on the housing aspect, but there's a minimum uplift of 100 kilowatt hours per meter squared required also. 100 euros per kilowatt hours per meter squared will give you the bare minimum of scoring, you know, so it's unlikely it will be successful. So the higher that uplift you can have, the better. You know, so in theory, a house that's a D, E, F, or whatever, lower down on the BR scale, has a much better chance of getting through, and there will be a greater number of measures associated with that. If you are thinking of standalone measures, you should be looking at the standalone grants available from SEAI, which an individual can apply themselves directly to SEAI for those.
Yeah, because Joanna also wants to know about the building fabric upgrade. Does it include windows and doors? And what is the pathway taken if the application to SEAI is not successful?
Yeah, possibly, as I said, the communities grant is possibly the only grant available for windows and doors. No other grant from SEAI will cover windows and doors. But for housing to be part of the Better Energy Communities grant, it would have to include a number of measures, not just single measures, and you will have to get this particular uplift, as I said, a minimum of 100 kilowatt hours per meter squared, ideally much higher than that to be successful in the application. Otherwise, you know, if you fail under the BEC, you have to go back to SEAI and look for standalone grants, which does not or will not include windows and doors, but it will include your external wall insulation, internal wall insulation, pumped cavity, attic insulation, heating controls. It will not support fossil fuel boilers either.
Okay. Another question in from Vicky. Is it worth investing in installing electric solar panels on the roof of a community centre and resell excess energy to the grid?
That's a very good question. Obviously, from our perspective and from an SEAI perspective, it is self-consumption, you know, so we will look at your energy consumption and size the system appropriately. So for most community centres, you are talking of a very small system, possibly a 2 kilowatt, 4 kilowatt system, and potentially a small battery system to go along with it if you're dependent on your usage and hours of operation, you know. But certainly as it stands, currently as it stands, you will not make money out of selling back to the grid. That currently isn't an option anyways. You will not receive any money sending electricity back out to the grid at the moment. But come mid 2021, there's a possibility there will be a feed-in tariff available. As of yet, we have no idea how much you will get per kilowatt hour that you send back out. You know, so that's, you kind of have to watch this space really.
Okay, question in from Eamon. What standard does energy audit need to be completed to? Is BER suitable?
Depends whether you're talking about a non-domestic or domestic. If it's a domestic, a BER will be required with an advisory report. If it's a non-domestic, shall we say, it's a factory or an SME, or it's an office block somewhere, we would require quite a bit of detail in it. So if it's a general audit, we'll have to include and recommend a large number of measures. If it's a specific type audit and we're just concentrating on either lighting or heating controls or something like that, you know, the basics that we require is energy profile. So we have to look back on your electricity and thermal consumption, a minimum of 12 months, if not 24 months, it'd be even better. Look at how much you're paying in terms of your kilowatt hour or unit cost. Look at the recommendations. If it's, again, lighting, we'll have to fill in a specific SEAI lighting template there to determine the savings. If it's heating controls, we'll do out those calculations, and as I said, they will be submitted to SEAI for approval and make sure they're happy with our calculation methodology. You know, so again, maybe just in that question, if they can clarify whether it's a domestic or whether it's a non-domestic commercial type.
Okay, this question in from Cormac. Is it possible to get grant aid for external pitch lighting conversion to LED in a sports ground? Does it need to be incorporated with other measures?
It's a lighting upgrade. In theory, it should be incorporated with other measures. Now, we have been successful in getting lighting projects through as standalone measures, but if there was some other measure you could incorporate, it would be fantastic. You know, so it might be something as simple as heating controls, or, you know, installing a new timer, thermostat, or the likes. You know, so we'd consider each project individually anyways, you know, so if you did want to approach it separately, we can talk about that off air.
Okay, I have an email in from Enver Kohler. He's saying that he's applied for deep retrofit for the last 3 years. So he's wondering why we haven't accepted his application. As I said,
I'm not aware of this. In theory, it's a 1970s build, BR F2. It seems to be ticking a lot of boxes. There's a national housing retrofit scheme in place at the moment, which is very heavily subscribed. So don't know what reason or why you would not be accepted for an application. Again, individual cases like this, would rather talk off air about it and just to find out exactly what's the problem, you know.
Another one, does removing storage heaters and replacement with other heating systems count for storage heater upgrades?
Yeah, again, there's not a huge amount of detail, but it all depends what you are considering, whether you're considering heat pumps or whether you're considering ceramic panel heaters or the lights. You know, there's a couple of options there. Not sure what they're thinking of, but I suppose just to bear in mind, storage heaters, if you have storage heaters, generally you potentially have night rate electricity. If you convert to another heating type, whether it be electricity, you're using more than likely using day rate electricity, which is potentially twice the cost of your night rate. So again, something we could discuss off air. You could potentially be exposing yourself to higher running costs.
Okay, there's a question in from Jeanette. How do SEC groups become aware of the best solution to suit their needs? For SMEs, community groups, is it up to them to work that out, or do 3CA or an energy consultant advise them? Is there a mechanism for suppliers of energy efficient solutions to build awareness among these groups?
Very good question. I suppose SECs, yeah, there's a whole network there. You have network mentors who are regularly in touch with you. From our perspective, you know, there's energy master plans being completed for a number of SECs around our region, you know, so through the energy master planning process, a number of energy audits will be completed, which will give us an idea of some of the measures that are required. If your building isn't audited under the energy master plan, by all means you can come to ourselves or another energy consultant who will advise you on what you should be doing within your own building. Now, as I said, if you want to be part of an application process, an energy audit would have to be completed. So, you know, if you're not part of an SEC or you're some other grouping, most definitely contact us or some other consultant. Get your energy audit complete, which will outline all the measures that you should be considering. They will also give you an indication of the amount of energy you would save, the associated costs, and possibly they'll give you a very good indication of what the project itself will cost as well. You know, so certainly we have no issue talking to communities or SMEs to discuss that with you.
Okay, there's a question in from Michelle. Are schools eligible?
Yes, schools are eligible. Again, it's depending what type of school you are. National schools and secondary schools are eligible, and I believe they are entitled to 50% funding on energy efficiency measures. If you are third level or higher, it's only 30% funding. So basically, yes, schools are eligible.
Okay, there was a question in from Mary Beans. Are AHBs eligible to apply for 50% funding?
Sorry, Sean.
AHBs. I did go back to Mary and ask what.
Oh, approved housing boards. Yes. Short answer, yes. They are eligible for funding, and they will help an application as well under the housing requirement for better energy communities. So most definitely, if there is a housing association, come talk to us and we'll be more than happy to give you a steer as to where you should be going.
Okay, and Dan McNerney wants to know when the presentation will be made available afterwards.
Yes, I believe it will be available on our YouTube channel, so maybe Mary can confirm that. But I also believe Mary will be issuing a survey just to follow up with everybody, just make sure we answered all their questions. So.
Yep, that's all the questions.
Okay. Brilliant. If there's no more questions, we'll conclude the presentation. Thank you for your participation. It was very well attended. As I said, it should be available on YouTube channel. Our number is there if you wish to make contact with us. I know a lot of you have my own mobile number, and again, it should be circulated very shortly for anybody who wants it. All right. Thanks very much, everyone.